Okay. So my name is Barret. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Lunar Space Corporation, a new space startup that was founded out of MIT. I'm currently a first-year graduate student at MIT. I'm pursuing a master's in aeroastroengineering as well as an MBA dual degree program. And it's a 2-year program, so I'm about halfway through. I was in the Navy prior to this for 5 years as a nuclear submarine officer, and I graduated from UCLA in 2011 with a bachelor's in astrophysics. So what's brought me here today has been originally my passion for space and the space industry, and I'm really excited to be co-founder of a company, a new startup within the space industry, because it's an exciting time for space in that there's a lot of new investments and a much lower barrier to entry to enter into the space industry. A lower cost of launch, satellite development are all primary drivers of that. And what we're doing at Lunar Station right now is we are building a small satellite about the size of a loaf of bread with a camera on board that is going to go into low Earth orbit. We're launching with Virgin Orbit's Q1 2018, and we're going to provide live high definition video of the lunar surface. So one of the most critical parts of starting a business is understanding the customer, who's going to buy the product that you produce. And it's not enough to just have a cool technology and great engineering. You also have to understand who's going to be the end user and the purchaser of this product. So that's something that we've had a lot of interesting experiences with. It's all you can do at first is kind of guess, talk to people, but until you start actually developing the product and showing a prototype and trying to launch the business, will you get a better understanding of who the customer actually is. And it could be something that is evolving constantly too, right? You might have too large of a focus at first and you need to narrow it down, or vice versa. It's something that we have addressed by just talking to as many people as possible, as many interviews as possible. We've interviewed probably close to 100 people across a range of industries, from academia to the private space industry to students, and it's definitely been the way that we've been able to focus down our lens on who the actual customer is by kind of casting a wide net at first and just talking to people. So the primary thing that we are offering is orbital intelligence of the lunar surface. Right now, current offerings for that there's about 4 satellites that are orbiting the moon itself. One of the most prominent ones is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter from NASA. And what no satellite that is currently in service does is take live real-time video of the lunar surface. In fact, the only orbiting video platform is the ISS right now, so you could Google ISS HD video stream and find a link to a camera basically on the International Space Station, but there doesn't exist any other service. So for people who want to see what is happening on the moon right now, you have a couple options. You could go and buy yourself an amateur telescope, which can cost several $100s, a nice pair of binoculars, or you can look up, but there are issues with that, such as weather. And what a satellite is able to do is get above the clouds, get above the atmospheric diffraction. So what we're doing is we are placing a camera facing the moon, and we're able to not only provide live HD video stream of the lunar surface, but we're going to start building up a database for other uses in the future. There are a bunch of private space companies that are aiming to go to the moon in the next several years. So we can provide verification that their mission went successfully by providing them with that HD video stream constantly. And one way that we can make this product valuable to the most amount of people possible is by putting up the video stream on YouTube, which is one of the initial things we intend to do, and it'll be completely free just for this live HD stream to the end user. But what we will be doing for making initial revenue is ad revenue. So that's just one example of how we're able to derive a MVP with the ultimate goal of getting to a much larger database. So the way that we're going to be delivering this value proposition is through two platforms primarily. We're going to build our own ground station for downlinking the video from the satellite. Eventually we'll have multiple satellites in orbit to give 24/7 coverage of the moon. And we're going to be doing processing on the cloud. We have a couple vendors in mind right now that can handle that. And distribution will be through YouTube, which will be a platform that's accessible to most of the world. Okay, so our initial revenue stream, like I talked about, will be primarily ad revenue through YouTube. I won't get into specific numbers here, but that will be the large driver. We've done a decent amount of market research based on the current top channels on YouTube and equivalent content channels. For example, views of the ISS's live stream, NASA's official YouTube channel, SpaceX's official YouTube channel. So we're able to do good market research based on near equivalent offerings currently and project what the total amount of views will be and then derive what the ad revenue will be from the total amount of expected views. So that's how we're looking at our initial revenue stream. Now, eventually, what this will allow us to do is to build up a database of lunar data, for example, average meteorite impacts at a given area. And that's going to be extremely valuable data to other companies that are eventually going to be going to the moon. So Blue Origin announced just a couple of weeks ago a plan to create a lunar lander. And one of the valuable pieces of data will be where should you actually land given the different hazards on the moon. So that'll be information that we can provide. So not only will we have this initial revenue stream that we've calculated rough projections for from YouTube revenue, but then we'll also have the option to provide proprietary data to specific customers. So the minimum viable product came about one as a consequence of the different platforms for delivering our content. So YouTube was the easiest way for us to disseminate our content, and luckily YouTube has basically a portal built into it for people who want to upload content with ads selected and generate revenue from that. So we kind of went in a roundabout way of saying, hey, this is what we want to offer to people ultimately. Now, how do we actually make money off of that while still giving people the greatest access possible in order to sustain the business? So one, we looked at the platform, and then two, we figured out how can we monetize this in the least impactful way to the end customer. So the space industry as a whole is going through a very interesting movement. Some people refer to it as the new space movement, in that there's a large amount of investment being put into private space companies. For example, one of the most well-known ones is SpaceX, totally funded initially by private investments from Elon Musk. And what this is driving, this large influx of private capital within the space industry, is lowering costs of different components, lowering costs of launch, and thus lower barriers of entry and initial capital costs for companies that want to start up and build a small satellite, for example. So the type of satellite that we're building is what's referred to as a 3U cube satellite. By U, I mean unit. And a 1U, for example, is just a standard 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters little cube. And you can stack them together to make a 3U or 6U. And what this format has done is it's created a standardized format and platform for people who want to launch small satellites in a low-cost way. So vendors are then able to produce standardized components, which drives down cost for them and thus cost for the end user. So you can look at building a 3U cube satellite with solar panels, an electric power system, and a payload for a couple $100,000 right now. And launch costs have dropped significantly to about $30,000 per kilogram. So the 3U cube satellite we're building, for example, is going to weigh, as most 3Us do, around 5 kilograms at most. So we're able to go and fund the design, construction, and launch of a small satellite as a startup with just our startup capital. So it's a really interesting time for the space industry, as we see not a lot of new entrants coming because of these lowering costs. So initially our scaling strategy is going to be a function of building additional satellites to provide more content. And by that I mean eventually we need to get to a lunar orbit, which is more capital intensive. There's not an easy commercial provider of placing a satellite into lunar orbit right now. So that is something that's anticipated to become more accessible within the next couple of years. So for this initial satellite we're building that is going into low Earth orbit, it's not going to be able to do very high resolution imagery. We're going to be broadcasting that video in near real time globally. So the primary customers for that will be educators, school children, anyone interested in space really. So in that sense, it's a smaller customer segment than what we would like to get to later on with our higher fidelity data offerings from lunar orbit, such as spectral analysis from meteorites impacting the moon and kicking up dust, and we'll be able to see what composite materials there are at that location by doing spectral analysis of the ejecta. So that information would be valuable to academics, to long-term lunar prospecting companies who would like to go and perform in situ resource utilization, which is essentially using materials in place at the moon to build things to make rocket fuel to get to Mars and beyond. So I would say the key takeaways that I've found so far from my experience at Lunar Station, where we're building a small satellite to obtain real-time video of the moon and provide it to the global audience for free, has been resilience and talking to customers, right? So we started off with basically a personal need, a personal desire to see a certain piece of information, myself and Blair DeWitt as co-founders. And then we want to see how can we make this a reality, how can we provide this capability. And then from that point, we started talking to other people with a similar mindset to see if they would also be interested in this product and if it would be a viable business plan. So we talked to a lot of people, we interviewed a lot of people, and we've had a lot of ups and downs as any startup has. Finances are always tight, but that goes to my second point, which is resilience. And there have been plenty times where it seems like things aren't going to work out, but you just keep working at it, you stay resilient, you talk to more people, and you make some interesting connections from people that can help you out. And as long as you stick with it and you keep pushing forward, you will accomplish your goals.